Hi everyone, welcome back to another James Bond review episode. This time, we're talking about A License to Kill. I'm Ross, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not new to the channel, welcome back. This is the final Timothy Dalton James Bond movie, and it is a phenomenal way to go out. It's a brilliant movie, an action-packed revenge thriller. This movie has highs, it doesn't have many lows, it's got everything you can want in a James Bond movie and more, and it does it at such a fast pace that this movie feels like it begins and ends in the same hour. It is top notch. I have to say that up front because I feel like it absolutely deserves to have that set up front. Now, this movie here came about 2 years after The Living Daylights, which was the previous review. And coming off that movie, Timothy Dalton said, I want to try something different. I don't want to do the same old James Bond movie. I want to do something. I want to strip James Bond of his gadgets. I want to take him out of his safety and security of MI6. And I want him to just go hardcore on these guys. I want him to just rip them to shreds and absolutely go nuts. And that's what not The Living Daylights. That's what License to Kill is. It is a straight up revenge thriller. Action thriller, I guess. Returning director John Glenn, this is his 5th time in the director's chair, and he came into this movie thinking, we're just going to give it our all. We're going to do our best on this movie, and it absolutely shows on screen. Now, when you look at his past films, he has gotten better and better and better with each subsequent release. The Living Daylights was probably his best up to that point, and License to Kill goes even better than that. It is filmed beautifully in Mexico City, where the majority of the film actually does take place. They did film a little bit of the movie in Florida, in the United States, of course, and that's mostly the beginning, say, 45 minutes of the movie, but the next hour and, say, 25 minutes of the film is all filmed and, well, not set. It's filmed in Mexico City, but it's actually set in the fictional city of Isthmus, which is, south of the border. It's pretty much Mexico without being in Mexico. And I think that was done just so that they don't throw any shade at Mexico City. And apparently, behind the scenes, Mexico and the people of Mexico really did give the James Bond film crew everything they could want. They were helpful. Whatever you need, we will do it for you. And the movie shows, you can see these beautiful set pieces. You can see these spectacular action sequences. Every dollar of this movie seems to be thrown up on screen, and I absolutely love it for that. This movie, The License to Kill, is wonderful. Now, I do own it at the back up here on VHS. It was one of those movies when I was younger that I would throw this on because it was a darker film, it was more serious, more action, and I adored it as a kid. And then when it was on DVD and eventually Blu-ray and everything like that, it's one of those movies, one of those James Bond movies where I can always just watch it. No matter what, I can put it on. And I say that often with a lot of James Bond films, that you don't need any backstory, you don't need anything. You can just throw it out of order. If you're watching it in chronological order, you can throw it out of order, put it on, and enjoy yourself. But I feel like this movie here is a phenomenal entry point into the James Bond franchise if someone wanted that. I have had in the past people say to me, I do want to watch the James Bond movies, but what film should I begin watching? And my default thing is either watch Casino Royale because it's the beginning of that continuity, or start at the beginning and watch Dr. No because it's the start of the James Bond franchise. But as time has gone on, I've kind of said to people, well, either watch License to Kill because it doesn't really have any of the fantastical gadgets, and it does have gadgets, but it doesn't have heavy reliance on gadgets throughout the movie. It's the gadgets in this film are kind of like dedicated to one scene, one action set piece, and then they're gone. Or another movie that I recommend is GoldenEye, which is coming up in my next review. But License to Kill for me is, from beginning to end, such a top-notch movie that it's hard not to recommend it. And I feel like over the last 20 years that Timothy Dalton's run as James Bond has been heavily re-looked at, I should say, re-criticised, but also people are starting to say, oh, I can see what he was doing, and this guy was well and truly ahead of his time. Now, before we get into all of that, let's get into the actual plot of the movie. Now, this movie begins with a wedding. It begins with Felix Leiter. James Bond's there. He's one of his groomsmen. I guess his best man, or one of two best men. And they're in a car driving through the Florida Keys there. And all of a sudden, the DEA helicopter comes down, stops them, and says, we've got Sanchez. He is now in Florida. We're going after him. And you find out that Sanchez is this drug lord kingpin from Isthmus City. He never leaves, or very rarely leaves, Isthmus City, which again, think of it as Mexico. He very rarely leaves, but he's left this time because his girlfriend, who's called Lupe, she's actually been trying to leave him, and she's been cheating on him with somebody else. And when Sanchez makes his appearance in this movie, he sees Lupe in bed with another man, and Sanchez and his goons grab this guy, and because he's promised his heart to this woman, Sanchez says, well, give him his heart. And the goons take him outside, and you just hear the screams of this guy as Sanchez then whips and tortures his girlfriend because she disrespected him. And that's your introduction to Sanchez. And he's played brilliantly by Robert Davi, who is, if you don't know, he's one of the Fratelli brothers from The Goonies. And he's in that film there. He's an opera-singing prison breakout thug, but he's so funny in that movie. And in this film here, he's nothing like that. He's deadly and menacing, and every time you see him on screen opposite Timothy Dalton, you're like, the tension is just there. You feel like you can just cut it with a knife. It's done perfectly. And so in his introduction scene, you find out that one of his main henchmen, is actually played by Benicio del Toro in one of his early acting roles, and he plays his henchman Dario. And again, Benicio del Toro, I first came to see this guy in The Usual Suspects, which was, I believe it was 1994. And when I was watching these movies when I was younger, I was watching them when I was younger, I looked at this guy and I'm like, hang on, that's the same guy that was from The Usual Suspects that didn't really speak English well. And in this movie, he's young, he's crazy, he's deadly, and he's in it for a chunk in the beginning of the movie, a major chunk at the end of the film, and he's kind of not in it in the middle of the movie, and it fits perfectly into the plot, so it's a good thing. But Dario and Sanchez, wow, they are a deadly combination in this movie. When they're together, it gets real, it gets deadly. So anyway, Sanchez has come back to get his girlfriend, who has escaped, or run away, I guess. He's going to take her back to Isthmus City. So as he's doing that, the DEA has found out that, hang on, we've got this guy. He's now in our city. We can arrest him. And there's this wonderful little chase sequence where he flies off in a little plane, and Bond and Felix and the rest of the DEA are in this helicopter, dressed up in their wedding suits, and they are giving chase in this helicopter. And they're like, well, he's going to leave the airspace in about 20 minutes. So we're not going to be able to do anything. Once he leaves the airspace, he's out of our jurisdiction. So we're not going to have anything to do. So Bond decides, no, what the hell with this? We're getting this guy. And he puts his parachute on, gets on the side of the plane, which has got this massive hook, this cable, the steel cable. He goes down onto the actual wing, the back fin wing of this little biplane that Sanchez is in, and he wraps the cable around it and then gets the helicopter people to winch it up. And it's this brilliant sequence that you just see it on camera, all of it done, and the plane is just traveling and all of a sudden just goes vertical as they've captured Sanchez. And then Bond and Felix parachute out, land at the wedding, and then they walk in with the bride, and so is the pre-title sequence is done. We then go into the Living Daylights theme song by Gladys Knight, and this movie here was one of those ones I had it on repeat growing up. Awesome. It is not a rock theme. It is more of a power ballad. It very much reminds me of, say, The Spy Who Loved Me, something like that, with a bit of Goldfinger thrown in there. It's wonderful. It's beautiful, and just great. But that introduction to this movie, that whole 10-minute sequence is heart racing. Like, are they going to get him? Yes, they are. You see Bond, jumping down onto the back of it. Again, the stunt guys in this movie, give them awards, give them praise. They deserve it. It's phenomenal. And then after the title sequence is over and after the theme song's done, we then move to Sanchez. He's now been questioned. He's been arrested by the police. He's being questioned. And Sanchez pretty much says, I'm going to be free. I'm putting a reward for $2 million, whoever breaks me out of here. And he's laughing as the police are the DEA is interrogating him, and he doesn't care. He goes, I'll be free, don't worry about that. And then in between the interrogation, we then cut to Felix Leiter's wedding. And we see Felix Leiter and his wife, and they're very happy together, and Bondi's there beside him. And it's just a great sequence. And again, I love the fact that they do a callback to Bond himself being married on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I love that it's continuing the continuity. Because when we came to The Living Daylights, they recast Moneypenny, but they kept M, they kept some of the other supporting crew like Q, and obviously Bond had changed. So it was a bit of a thing of, is this the same continuity we're dealing with? Yeah, it is, because in this film, Felix's wife, Della, she's got her, like, the thing that they hold and they throw it, and whichever guy grabs it is the next one to get married. And she whips it off and then throws it at Bond and says, well, the next one that has this is going to get married. And Bond pretty much just looks at her and says, no, and then thanks them both for the night and then takes off and goes back to his hotel. And she's like, did I do something wrong? And Felix says to her, look, he was married once, but it was a long time ago. And it's this, the way Dalton plays it, that subtle, it just lets you know that this guy's had his heart broken. And I don't know how to explain it. He's so wonderfully done, filmed, acted, everything. That little sequence is just beautiful. And even the accompanying musical score by Michael Kamen, who a lot of people might know from Die Hard and the Lethal Weapon movies. I always had issues with Michael Kamen's score in this movie because I felt like it was too similar to Die Hard and too similar to Lethal Weapon, that it kind of felt like it was a copy and paste job. But the more I've watched this movie over the last 25 years, the more I've really come to appreciate that this film here, the musical score that Michael Kamen brings here to this movie, the amount of originality he's brought into this, the use of the James Bond theme, the subtle musical cues that he just puts throughout the plot as things are happening throughout scenes. It is actually probably one of my favourite musical scores in the James Bond franchise. And that says a lot because John Barry has given us some of the best musical scores in any of the Bond franchise. But Michael Kamen, this movie just grows on me each time I watch it. Not the movie itself. The movie itself is always top for me. But this musical score continues to grow on me each and every single time I listen to it, or each and every time I watch this movie. It is continuously leaving a mark upon my heart where it's just like, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And this movie here really does set the tone with the musical score. The musical score is brilliant, and like I said, it is one of the best. I think Timothy Dalton has actually lucked out as having 2 James Bond movies, 2 excellent scripts, and 2 musical scores that are just perfect. I can't put a fault to the musical score anymore. It's taken me a while, but I've come around to this musical score, and I will fight tooth and nail to hold it up, to really support this music. Michael Kamen, wonderful job. Absolutely wonderful. Now, during these sequences after the pre-title sequence when, Felix and Dalla are, having their night together after the wedding's over, you actually get it intercut with Sanchez and his escape from prison custody. They're transporting him in trucks, in armoured trucks and all security guard, and you find out that one of the main DEA agents that's actually friends with Felix, this guy's name is Killifer in the movie, he actually turns against the DEA for the $2 million, knocks a guy out with a shotgun. As the truck goes into the ocean, he's rescued along with Sanchez, and they both escape, and he's given the $2 million, and obviously he gives up Felix's address and everything like that, and Sanchez sends Dario to visit Felix on the night of his wedding, and that is a horrible thought, because in the beginning of the movie, when Sanchez saw his girlfriend in bed with another man, what they did to that man, you can only imagine. And when they come to the house of Felix, and Dario is there, and they are holding Felix's wife, we're going to give her, we gave her a nice honeymoon. That haunting thoughts in my head about what they did to her, and then the way that they chain up Felix and feed him to a shark, horrendous. And then the rest of the movie plays off of that sequence of Felix survives, his wife doesn't, but Felix is in intensive care. The DEA doesn't want to do anything about it because either they don't want to or they can't, because Sanchez has now escaped back to Isthmus City. So Bond decides, well, I need to do something about it. And the rest of the movie is him on a revenge mission to not only take down Sanchez, but also his criminal and drug empire. And in the process, he quits MI6, he leaves, and yeah, he's on a lone mission now. And it's a wonderful moment because throughout the entire franchise leading up to this, we've had at least 15, 16 movies up to this point, I believe. And M has always been, although hard on Bond, he's always been a supporter of Bond and always says that if Bond believes in this, then he believes in Bond and he trusts Bond. And in this film here, he pretty much says to Bond, you need to leave this petty revenge. You need to just leave it because you're meant to be on a mission elsewhere and you haven't gone. So leave this alone. Let the CIA or the DEA deal with this. Not up to you. And Bond is pretty much saying, like, this is my friend. This is Felix. You know Felix. Like, I need to deal with this. And because of that, he tenders his resignation and he's gone. He escapes the safe house that MI6 has in Florida and he's on the loose now. And when he gets into Isthmus City, it's this fantastic sequence of Bond infiltrating Sanchez's group, pretty much telling Sanchez that, yes, I was a secret agent previously, an agent for MI6, but I've quit that now. And Sanchez believes Bond wants to be a part of his group and trusts Bond enough and believes Bond because he's one of those people that he believes in loyalty.
Something you better understand, amigo. Loyalty is more important to me than money. Now get the cop.
Sanchez is such a stickler because he just, loyalty. For him, it is loyalty. If you're loyal to him, he will protect you with everything that he's got. And Bond manages to wiggle his way in. And because of that, Sanchez pretty much treats Bond as a house guest. He has him living at his house. Through that, Bond and Lupe become closer. They obviously sleep together, which Sanchez doesn't know. And Bond becomes pretty much like one of his one of his informants. Bond feeds Sanchez false information, which Sanchez then goes out of paranoia and begins turning against his own once former crew. Like, he kills this guy, Milton Crest, because Milton Crest had the money, like $5 million of Sanchez's money, but Bond went to Milton Crest, stole the money out of a plane as it was about to take off, flew to Isthmus City, deposited that money into one of Sanchez's owned banks. Then, when Milton Crest arrived in Isthmus City, Bond suggested to Sanchez that it was a person arriving via boat that night, then gets to the boat before Sanchez, plants the $5 million back on the boat for Sanchez to realise, hang on, Milton Crest turned against me and lied to me, then kills Milton Crest. And when he returns to Bond, arrives back at the house before Sanchez, and he again thanks Bond for the information. And Bond is doing this bit by bit by bit to find out not only to find out what his drug operation is, but also the perfect opportunity to kill him. And the last act of the movie is at one of Sanchez's, he's got this massive compound where they're putting cocaine into fuel, into petrol, and they're mixing it together, and they've got all these different drug kingpins there from China and Japan and things like that. They're all there, and Sanchez is getting them into the business, and they're going to give him money and this and that, and it's an exchange of stuff. And when Bond is there, he's going to kill Sanchez that day. But Dario rocks back up at this point. He's now back in the movie, and Dario recognizes Bond from an earlier sequence at a boat bar. And when you see that Dario recognizes Bond, you're just waiting for that moment, and Dario and Bond are pretty much right beside each other, and Dario's telling him, don't move, I recognize you now. Bond knows he's in the hole now. And then when Sanchez looks over and sees them both, the smile on his face just turns to this serious look, and it almost feels like betrayal. Like Sanchez trusted Bond, and now all of a sudden Bond has turned against him. And the next 25-minute sequence of Bond fighting for his life, blowing up this massive compound where the drug manufacturing is, and then these truck sequences along the cliffside mountains is some of the best action we've seen in a Bond film in the last 5 years at this point, in the last couple of movies actually. And it's brilliant, absolutely phenomenal. You've got rockets going off, you've got planes flying, 3 trucks, explosions, massive fire. And a fun fact, when I was watching this movie just recently, there's a part in the movie where there's this massive area of fire, and Bond is in a semi-truck, and he puts the brakes on, kicks the wheels up like that, and drives through on his back wheels. And when he comes out of the fire and lands down and drives off, that was the first memory I have of ever seeing a James Bond movie back in the early 90s or late 80s. I remember my dad took me and my 2 older brothers to the Melbourne Motor Show, or the car show. And when we got back that night, my mum was watching a movie, and I was sitting down in the living room. My mum was crocheting on the couch, and we were all watching the movie, and the movie was License to Kill. And the first thing I remember seeing when I saw this movie was the truck coming out of the flames, dropping down, and then driving forward. And this was the first one that I ever saw, the first James Bond. That memory is embedded in my head. It is phenomenal. Now, I'm going to check up these 2 actresses because I always get the names of these actresses mixed up. Now, there are 2 fantastic women in this movie. Give me a moment. I'm just going to actually bring it up here because I try and get the pronunciation correct. So The two women in this movie, we've got Lupe, who I've mentioned, and she's played by Talisa Soto. Talisa Soto, I believe that's how you would pronounce it. Now, Lupe is the girlfriend, the lover of Sanchez, and she's a woman that wants to get out of the business. She does not want to be connected to this guy anymore. She's looking for any way to escape, and she falls in love with Bond and is absolutely infatuated with Bond throughout this movie. Like, there's a part in the movie where she goes to Bond's hotel where Q is in this movie, and Pam Bouvier. And Pam is one of the other love interests in this movie, but she shows up and she says, "You've got to help Bond. He spent the night with me, this and that. I love him, all this." And Q's like, yep, we'll help him, this and this and that. She eventually leaves, and then Pam is this moment, she just has this burst of, like, she's pissed off that Bond, she spent this, she imitates Lupe, and it's a fantastic moment. And Pam Bouvier is played by Carrie Lowell, and she's so beautiful in this movie. I think Pam and Lupe are the two most beautiful women in any single James Bond movie, from Dr. No right up to No Time to Die. I feel like this movie, License to Kill, has the sexiest women, the best looking women, and Pam is probably one of my favorites. She's easily in my top 5. Pam is in my top 5 Bond girls in the entire franchise. She is absolutely beautiful and holds her own. Like, the first time we see her, she's just in a meeting with oh my Lord, I've forgotten his name, with Felix Leiter. She's in a meeting with Felix Leiter, and it's just a 5-second sequence. She's there, she turns around, looks at Bond, stands up, thanks Felix, and walks out the room. That's it. You don't really think anything of it. You don't think you're meant to. You just, okay, no problems. That's Pam. Pam meet Bond. Yep, bye. The next time we see her, we find out that she's a very important connection to Felix and also to one of Sanchez's henchmen. And when we see her for the second time, and her main introduction in the movie, it's at a boat bar. It's like this bar on the water or something, and Bond shows up on a boat, and he's there to meet Pam Bouvier. And when he shows up, he sits down with her, and they're all of a sudden, after a little bit of a conversation, Dario comes into the bar, and there's this massive little shootout, a punch-on. Bond and Pam escape. But when Pam says to Bond, "Are you packing?" Bond pulls out his Walther and shows her under the table. And then she just looks at him and goes, and she pulls out this shotgun, and she's holding this shotgun under the table. Now, first of all, how did she get the shotgun into the bar? How did nobody see her? And how did she manage to conceal it under the table and not arouse any suspicion? I don't know. But Pam is great, and I absolutely love her in this film. So well done for the character of Pam. She's brilliant. And when she cuts her hair, when she arrives in Isthmus City and she cuts her hair, and she then introduces herself as James Bond's secretary or assistant, I cannot remember actually, when she reveals herself with her cut hair and this beautiful dress suit, it is... Let's just say young Ross was very much enamored by this woman. He was like, wow, that is the sexiest woman I've ever seen. And then she just gets better. Just search it out online, watch the movie if you haven't. Absolutely beautiful. Pam and Lupe are my dream Bond women. They are the best. Now, I can't talk highly enough of everybody in this movie, but because it is Timothy Dalton's final James Bond movie, I do want to discuss Timothy Dalton in a bit more detail. First of all, Timothy Dalton is my favourite James Bond. It took me over 20 years to finally make that realisation. Back in the day, I used to work at a video store, and I had a friend there named Besnick. And Besnick and I were both James Bond fanatics. We were absolute nuts when it came to James Bond. We watched the movies. We would always put a James Bond movie on at the video store when we were working together and just have the James Bond movie on, and we'd put different music on in the background. And we would always talk about James Bond, always watch James Bond. Every time he would come to the bottle shop where I was working, in the back room I would have a DVD player there, and we would watch The Living Daylights together. We always felt that Timothy Dalton was our James Bond. But over time, I always took On Her Majesty's Secret Service as my favourite Bond movie. In turn, I always thought, well, if it's my favourite movie and my favourite score and theme song, it has to be my favourite Bond. And it was always wired like that up there in my head. But in the last couple of years, I've really come around again and thought to myself, well, I can have a favourite movie and a different favourite Bond. And Timothy Dalton, for me, is my James Bond. He's everything that Daniel Craig wants to be as James Bond, but Timothy Dalton is 100 times better. And throughout his run, which is only 2 films, and should have gotten a third, but in his 2 movies, he never has a dull moment. His acting is always the best. He has some fantastic action sequences to really elevate his performance even more. And he really does play the role like I hadn't seen up to this point. Roger Moore was always like the cool uncle, and moving into Timothy Dalton, he was a younger, refreshed actor. He really did handle the Bond films perfectly. And I think in this film, License to Kill, Timothy Dalton really gives it his all, and you can see it on screen. Now, I spoke about the one sequence in this movie where they use Bond gadgets, and Timothy Dalton wanted to strip Bond of everything that helps him in previous movies, so strip away his support from MI6 and strip away his use of gadgets. And there is only one sequence. Now, there's a moment in the movie where Moneypenny in London, she's worried about Bond and gets in contact with Q, and Q goes to Isthmus City and brings a whole bunch of gadgets for Bond, and Q, from probably about an hour into the movie, is here until the end. And he uses these gadgets only in an action sequence where he's trying to assassinate Sanchez, and he fails. And it's great because it's only a single-use moment of gadgets, but again, you see Timothy Dalton really do play up the vulnerability, the revenge aspect, the anger. It's all here, and I feel like Timothy Dalton does that best. And I think he's getting the recognition he deserves in the last, say, 10 years as James Bond, where fans and critics as a whole have kind of come around and said, we understand what he was doing, and yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So for me, Timothy Dalton, wonderful. I could have done with another 2 or 3 movies from him. Unfortunately, we had the massive gap between 1989 when this released and 1994, 95 when GoldenEye was released. And yeah, he decided to bow out at that point, and then we got Pierce Brosnan in the role in GoldenEye, which isn't a bad thing. Pierce Brosnan in that movie is top notch, and in Timothy Dalton in this is the best he's ever been. So it's just a very different movie. It's a revenge film. It doesn't really have MI6 in it. London is not even a location that Bond goes to. Look, I love this movie. I find it to be one of the best. It's my top 5 Bond film. It is starring my favourite Bond, and no complaints from me. No complaints from me. Now, I am going to go and bring up my list, because we've got the lists here. We've got a kill count of Bond, and we have 8. Bond kills a couple of people. He goes on a bit of a killing streak in this movie towards the beginning, where he's looking for those connected to Felix Leiter's, you're not sure if Felix Leiter's dead at this point, and he's not. He's in intensive care, but you're not sure if he's going to survive. But actually, yeah, he does. He does survive at the end of the movie, Felix, and he's on a phone call with Bond. And the tone of Felix at the end is probably my only downside to this film, where, you know, the guy's lost his wife, he's lost his legs, he's lost his whatever. He's been attacked by a shark and pretty much eaten alive. He survives, though, and he's laughing with Bond over the phone. And I'm just like, I know you can't end the movie on a sour note. I get it. But that's my only complaint with this movie, is that Felix is laughing after his wife's death. And I'm kind of thrown off when it comes to that. But anyway, Bond kills 8 people in this movie. He does kill Dario, and he does kill Sanchez, which is pretty rare for Bond to take out both the henchman and the main villain in the movie and actually be the one that causes their death. And Sanchez's death and Dario's death are some of the best in the whole film. Milton Crest, his end is pretty brutal, and I can't include that, but he dies in a pressurized chamber when the pressure is really dialed up, and that's pretty horrible. But yeah, we visit 2 locations in this movie. We've got Florida, and we have Isthmus, which is a fictional city in South America. And then finally, Bond beds 2 women, Pam Bouvier and Lupe. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that surname, but yeah, I look, final thoughts are, I absolutely love this movie. I feel like it's got all of the elements that make a wonderful Bond film. I don't think it loses anything without having MI6 there. As a matter of fact, I feel like it actually adds to the story, because now all of a sudden Bond can't rely on anybody except himself and those that he calls his friends, which is Pam and Q. And yes, he uses gadgets, but it's only a tiny little sequence. The rest of the movie is Bond and his wits, and it is his smarts and the way he manipulates Sanchez. And I absolutely love that, because we haven't really seen that in a Bond film up to this point. So, top marks there. I love it. Now, the next film I'm going to be talking about, the next review in the James Bond franchise, I should say, is going to be... I don't actually have it up here. I once had the VHS, but I don't have it anymore. But it's GoldenEye. We're going to be talking about GoldenEye next. And the first entry in the Timothy... this is the final entry of the Timothy Dalton. That, GoldenEye, will be the first entry in the Pierce Brosnan run of James Bond. So I hope you can come back for that. Now, I just want to thank everybody for everything, for the comments, for the likes, those that have subscribed. I really thank you so much. It does mean a lot. I know I'm only gaining like 1 or 2 subscribers every week, but for me, for someone that's just got a tiny little channel that edits films and scripts all this on his own, it means a hell of a lot to me. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for returning. For subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about doing that and throw me a subscribe down the bottom, or a like if you want. It helps out the channel and it helps me out, and means that I'll continue to do this for longer. So yeah. But my next review, I'm actually thinking about doing a movie called The Lost Boys. I'm not 100% sure. I just want to see people's reactions to that. I've posted another video up that went live before this one, which was almost like a haul video, me showing a couple of movies that I've purchased. Dr. No VHS was one of them. I filmed it just before I filmed this review, and in that I asked people if The Lost Boys is a movie that they would like to see me review. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video and let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, until I see you next time, take care of yourselves. Leave me a comment below. Follow me on Instagram. It'll be up on the screen here. And I'll see you next time. Ross will return.
We're south of the border. It's a man's world.